Yeah, my name's Lawrence Bennett. I'm a country manager for WorldFirst in the UK. So WorldFirst is a company that was started in the UK about 20 years ago. It's kind of it's a bit of an unsung kind of tech story in the UK. It doesn't really get talked about as often as it should, I think, in some of the conversations, but it is a massive kind of UK fintech success story. It started in 2004 as one of the first companies doing, multi-currency, FX, and that kind of enabling international trade piece long before a lot of companies were looking at this. But it got bought by Ant Group, it's now part of the Ant International family, which is based out of Singapore, and has become in itself a huge business. So it found real kind of product market fit in Asia and has grown massively off the back of that and spread kind of throughout the world. So it's done about 300 billion in TPV since it launched. A huge portion of that has been in the last year or two, and it's kind of growing at the rate of knots. So it's a really interesting company. I think that Ant as a whole is arguably one of the most interesting companies in fintech you can work at in the world right now, and WorldFirst is a really, really interesting part of that. What has really, really been interesting for me is seeing how we've been able to leverage the global size and scale of Ant International, but also what WorldFirst has become on the international stage to drive some really interesting stuff in the UK and to better serve businesses in the UK and the kind of global economy at the moment. So, we're launching some really interesting stuff. We just launched the World Card recently, which is kind of an embedded FX card proposition, which allows businesses in the UK to spend money in a huge number of different currencies as if they are a local all across the world, earn rewards while they're doing it, and actually facilitate that kind of international growth and trade that has been so sorely kind of missing in the UK for a long time. But there's so much more we need to do. We're launching things around the lending and money space and the savings and return space, or hope to, and there's a lot more to do. But we've got a real kind of clear focus on what we want to be and who we want to target now, and that's really kind of paying off. So there's a bunch of really interesting stuff happening, and I think that WorldFirst is a company which has been around for a little while in the UK, but it's definitely interesting. It's entering a really, really exciting chapter. I think there's a really interesting thing that came up in the discussion today around how much innovation there is going on in the UK and how much innovation there is going on just generally globally around fintech. But what became quite clear from looking at who was in the audience and on the panel is that not all of those benefits are evenly distributed. There are still industries and countries and part of the world that are not seeing as much upside from kind of the fast evolution in the fintech space. There are cash-heavy, contract-heavy, slow offline industries like construction, which don't necessarily get as much love. And there was a really interesting guy on our panel who's looking to address that. But the fact that fintech and fintech companies seem to, very heavily target digital-first industries historically, and actually, that is slowly changing. And there are more companies that are starting to target companies that operate in different spaces and different markets and different companies and try to solve different problems. And for me, that's really interesting. So I've been working in fintech for a long time now. How do we make life better for e-commerce merchants and digital businesses only, and how do we do it in London or Europe or the US or some combination of that? And that's changing, and I love that. And I think that WorldFirst is another great example of a company that is truly global and is looking to serve and help companies grow and exist as locals wherever they are, and that's not always been the case.